Action.
Welcome to our first live streaming event of Impression Taiwan's. Our topic today is Black Movie, Black History. I'm Jaye, the curator of Taiwan Film Festival 2020. And right now we are in the Cultural Hall of Taipei Representative Office in the center of Berlin. And today we are very thrilled and exciting to invite the Taiwan ambassador to Germany, Professor Dr. Jhy-Wey. He is also a German literature professor. And before I go further with the conversation, I would like to just briefly explain what is Black movie exactly, because it's a little bit difficult to understand from first sight. So Black movies refers all the R-rated films, and all the R-rated crime films are produced between 1979 to 83. So in 5 years, there are more than 120 crime films are produced and present in Taiwanese cinema. And why it is so special in this period? Because before 1987, Taiwan was under a martial law and strict dictatorship, strict political censorship. So why there are so many crime films are allowed to present in the cinema? That's a big question for us today. And we invited Dr. Shieh to talk about the movie first, and then we will talk about how the censorship, how the martial law influenced people's mentality and their daily life till to date. So, Professor Dr. Shieh, you are very fond of movie rides. You visit cinema since child with the family. What is the experience of that?
Well, first of all, I'm very delighted and very honored to be invited to get into this conversation with you on the movies, Black movies, or what do you call it? For me, I was born in 1955, and that means no TV, no refrigerator, no telephone, of course, no internet either.
Yeah.
And that means going to movie, watching movie was one of very most important or significant event for not only for the children, for the kids, but also the family.
Yes.
So until today, although I'm not going to a theater, to a cinema to watch a movie, not that often anymore, I always associate watching movie with something important, just like an event, with something beautiful, with something maybe a little bit romantic.
Oh.
I can still recall how my father, my mother, and my younger sister and elder sister, my younger brother wasn't there, not yet. We sit on a rickshaw. My father, my mother, holding my sister, and I was holding there. I was kneeling down there. We went to watch a movie, and that was quite exciting for me because that was almost the only entertainment. And I can still recall I was very fond of Western, some Japanese samurai, and later on a little bit Kung Fu, like Bruce Lee, who died in 1973, unfortunately. But I was always a very passionate cinema goer. So until I can only say, you talked about it, censorship, dictatorship, martial law, from 1949 to 1987. To be frank, to be honest, although I'm regarded as someone who is quite standing quite opposite to this period. But at that time, I wasn't so aware of the situation that we were in martial law. So I can say only watching a movie or you said black movies.
Yeah.
I did see some of them, and I can still recall the name. It's strange. Lu Xiaofen,
Yes.
Lu Yichan, Yang Huishan, and there was one Lu Fengyou and something like that. Yeah. Well, that was in fact during the time where censorship was still going on. Yeah. But if you ask me the backgrounds of these movies,
Yes.
I just watched twice the documentary film of the Hou Jiran. Yeah. And there were some people who were invited to make a comment on the backgrounds. And they talk about the political backgrounds, although in the movies, they were quite unpolitical. The movies were quite unpolitical. But if you take a deep look, you can find out that there are some perspective which was very political, but people didn't talk about it.
They don't talk about it? Even young students, they don't talk about politics also?
I think most of them, I cannot say that for everyone, but for myself, I waked up quite late. That means when I got a scholarship from the German DAAD, Deutsche Akademische Ostaudienst, and that was 1982. After I graduated from the master program, I served for 2 years in military, and then I got a scholarship for Germany. Yes. Then I left Taiwan for Germany in 1982. When I was abroad, when I was in Germany, I started to notice the difference between a so-called dictatorship and democracy, the free world. Then I started quite late to realize what I have experienced. Nevertheless, I can still recall that there was something which always makes me feel uneasy. For example, in Taiwan, yes. During the time, I repeat it again, I wasn't aware of the martial law.
Yes.
But there was something which always annoyed me, and I was also scared because there were always military officers in the campus, in the high school and the university, and they checked my hair. I was not allowed to bear my hair too long, and we are afraid of them without knowing exactly why. And later on we started to realize what that means, the martial law. But now back to the black movies. Before you contact me to talk about black movies, I have to admit I wasn't so sure what did you mean about black movies.
Yes.
We know in German, man spricht von Schwarzmarkt. In Taiwan, we speak of the underworld, 黑道, gangster. But black movies, that wasn't a concept for me.
Yes.
But then I started to recall what I have seen. You said around 1979 and 1983. And really, I did see these movies, the Shanghai Sowetan and the Social Fires,
right,
the Shanghai Social Fires, the classical black movie, or for example, I think the first one that was the first Eurostep, 错误的第一步.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the female revenge and so on and so on. I did see some of them. Yes.
And what is the feedback of the people at that time to watch those sensational R movie? Do they feel like, wow, that's so shocked or surprised?
Quite bloody.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that was a reason. I wouldn't say that was successful movies, but that were movies which made quite a lot of money for this film industry, and there was violence, sexual scenes, and naked women, quite violent.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So and that's the reason why I think that was the if you go to these movies, you feel released, you feel relaxed. If you see all these scenes.
Yes, one critic in the documentary film said that people are repressed. Maybe those movies are help them to release the emotions. I don't know if people do feel repressed at that time, politically or emotionally.
Well, you don't have to think you are replaced
True.
in order to be truly
Yeah.
replaced. And I would say, out of my point of view, most of them, I think most of them were just like me. We didn't know exactly that we were replaced. But we were replaced, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
And I think going to these movies, which offers quite a lot of violence and sexual and naked women and so on,
Yeah.
that release your emotions. And I think the reason why people, at least at that time, the people did love to go to these movies for 1 hour, for 2 hours, was, if you look at it backwards, I think that must be the reason, because there was no dictatorship, no freedom of speech, no second party, and if more or 3 people gather around without notifying the police at the beginning,
Well, visit you.
you make yourself, you committed a crime. So I think in the school, from junior high school until university, so the whole society was confined in the quite difficult situation. And talking about martial law, you have to also mention one concept.
Yes.
And this strange word is Curator, Curefew. Curator means 宵禁, means you are not allowed to get out of your home, to go outdoors after when it's dark, after 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the evening.
So,
or you have to go back before it begins to be dark. Yeah, and curfew means, it comes from French. It means couvre-feu. Couvre-feu means to cover the fire, so that it becomes dark. And when it is dark, everything is scary, peaceful or still, and that was atmosphere.
yeah.
Darkness, no going out, stay at home. And when you talk with people, you are very careful. And that was this atmosphere. So martial law and Curator, and if you make a compare with this atmosphere in the real life, with the atmosphere described in these films, you have 2 different words. In these black movies, there was, just as I say, there was breaking laws, killing each other.
Yes, very violent.
And very violent. You see bloody faces. You see
While woman.
or you see something like samurai.
Yes.
These are, how do you say, the kanata? I think that's called it. But in the real world, nobody dared to carry a knife with you going on the street, and everyone is so awesome. In German, you see Ehrfurcht. That's quite an interesting word. Ehr means respect. Furcht means fear. Unless you show your respect to the state, to the authority, to the government. But behind the respect is the fear, Furcht. And that was real atmosphere in the society. Usually, if you notice that you are not allowed or you're not supposed to say anything critical against the government, against the party, or something that the government at that time, the KMT government, wouldn't like to hear. Back to the years, that was 1979. That's what the first era step, or the 1980, 1981 was female revenge and so on.
Yeah, and the Black movie.
The Black movie, that was around this years. And 1975, Chiang Kai-shek died.
Yes.
1979, 4 years later, Taiwan withdrew from the United Nations. And at the end of the year, and there was a Melidao incident. And the next year, the 228, 1980,
Yes.
the mother of Lin Yixiong and 2 daughters of him was slaughtered, murdered at home. That was a political incident, very sad and very, very crucial.
Yes.
Yeah. And 1 year later, 1981, again, a scholar of Taiwan who got a place, who was professor in the United States, Chen Wen-chen, came back with his wife and I think the son was 1 year old. He came back to Taiwan and was murdered by the Taiwanese FBI or CIA. Yeah. So 1979, 1980, 1981, it happens that was parallel.
Yes, the Black movie and all the incidents, tragedy happens.
Let's say a Black movie on the one side and white terror on the other side.
Yes.
But it's still, you see nothing unless in these movies.
True, that's the real part.
Only 10 years later, that was 1989. Beijing Shensi, city of sadness.
Yes. For
the first time, the tragedy of Taiwan, 228, 1947, was mentioned. 228 wasn't mentioned, but the background, the political background was 1947, 228. So I think it's a very important question to ask. Why did people all of a sudden to write this kind of screenplays, and with so much violence and sexual scenes and so on? And as I saw in this documentary of Ho Jiran, yes. Some people said at the first glance you see no connection between this movie and the world outside.
Yes.
So one of the critics said it was very unpolitical because you can't even recognize or hear Taiwan, the concept in there. But I think there was a censorship, and that is evidence enough that people have to be very careful. And the emotion of unsatisfied, the emotion of fear, the emotion of concerns about the future of Taiwan, being kicked out of the United Nations and allies. One of the leaders, they just left Taiwan, and at the end of the year 1979, the USA even broke the diplomatic relationship with Taiwan and built it up with China. So this kind of separation, this kinds of worries, it couldn't be spoken out.
Yes.
So they have to find another way, another outlet. And I think that's one of the reasons.
Why real
Why-
hustle?
yeah.
Black movie.
Yes, yes.
But besides black movie, what kind of movie would you watch? Will most of the students at that time will watch romantic movie, or
Yes,
there
yes.
are some propagandas movie like more or less educational.
There was some, but the movie which I really watched, well, I have to say that, going to the theater, going to the cinema at that time is quite different from the life today.
Okay, what's the difference?
Well, at that time, it's almost a luxury. It's not so cheap. And as young student, you don't have so much money to go to the movie as often as you want. That's first one I would like to point out. And second one is going to movie means for me at that time, but no, for my generation, means it's a good chance to, if you like a girl and you would like to have a contact with her. And the very good excuse is to ask her to go to a movie. And of course, it had to be a good movie, a romantic movie, a movie of which everyone says that's a good movie you have to see. And that usually, if I went to the movie alone, I used to see some Western, police
Kung fu
detective,
movie, yeah.
or kung fu movie. But if I ask a girl to go to the movie with me, of course I didn't choose out a kung fu movie or some other movies. That must be a romantic one, another Western,
Hollywood
American
movie?
Hollywood movie, let's say romantic melodrama. So you have to make your decision to which movie you're going, and the second decision you have to make is who are you going to invite to go to this movie with you. And that's important because at that time, when a girl say yes to your invitation to go to a movie with her, with you, that means yes, I do.
Like a big yes, I do.
No, it's
You are my girlfriend,
in a very, very small scale. But that means you have the chance
To hold her hand.
to hold hands, but only in the movie, only in the theater,
yes.
when it is dark. If you have the first holding hands, but for my generation, it was quite normal to hold for the first time a girl's hand. It's for the first time because it was dark. So you are brave enough to do that.
Yeah.
And if she doesn't withdraw her hand, and that means the second yes I do, a little bigger than the first one, to go to the theater with you. And so you can be sure she said yes to your invitation to be her friend.
Or just friend, not girlfriend.
Well, in this case, you can say yes, girlfriend. So the next time you go to the movie and the watching movie and drinking coffee, that was a must. If you are boyfriend, girlfriend. I used to say watching movie, drinking coffee, 50-50. 50 doesn't mean we go Dutch. No. Today we go Dutch. But at that time, you have to, if you don't have enough money, you have to borrow money from somewhere from your friends. You pay all the costs for the movie, for the coffee, maybe for some jaws or dumplings. After that, you pay for all this.
Yeah.
You pay, let's say, you pay the money and she pay the attention to what you say to her and so on.
Yeah.
And years later, when I came to Germany, I learned a Latin sentence, aphorism. It is said, in vino veritas. In vino veritas, that means when you drink the wine, you speak out what you really think. In vino, wine, veritas is the truth. And I said, in kino veritas, because if she goes to movie with you and she lets you hold her hand, and what that was, that means yes, I would like to be your girlfriend. So I always associate going to movies with less kind of romantic imagination or memories.
Yeah, that's good experience.
Yeah, and I don't think the people. But later on, I don't go to the cinema that often, because then there was there what TV, and then you have DVD, and you have home cinema, and you have Netflix, and so on and so on. So, well, from time to time, I still go to the movie with my daughter. Not yes.
That's another romantic story.
Well, I'm so glad that my daughter promised to go to the movie with her old daddy. That's another kind of happiness. I like it. I like it, and with my wife too, of course. Yes.
Yes, of course. And you came to Germany in 1982, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, for example, for me, I learn language. I learn German, English. I will watch a movie. I will read a novel. So, do you like? How do you approach German in the first place to watch a movie as well, or mostly reading?
Actually, I didn't go to the cinema that often when I came to Germany. Then anyway, not that often as when I was in Taiwan.
Yeah.
I think the reason was there was already TV in our dining room.
Yeah.
I lived in the dormitory, a student dormitory, together with in our floor there were another 10 or 12 boys. For only boys in our floor. So we watched TV almost every evening.
Okay.
And that was good for me because we watched the TV. Sometimes we cooked together and we talked about the movie of the TV. And sometimes we watched the movies. Yeah. So I didn't go to the cinema that often. And the other reasons to be, I don't want to humiliate the German cinema, but the German movies are always, they
a little bit dry.
I wouldn't say that, but they are too philosophical.
Okay.
Not entertaining enough. Not entertaining enough, and because of, I think we are spoiled by the Hollywood movies in Taiwan.
True.
Yeah. I'm not sure, spoiled. Anyway, if we go to the, I would rather read a novel, a German novel, or watch the TV, the news, or cabaret
Yeah.
in the TV.
So
I think one of the reasons was I didn't have that mood anymore. I was not that old, 28, but I didn't have that mood to ask some girl to go to the movie with me. The motivation wasn't there. No, that was the only joke. But I think what really happened is I watched quite a lot TV, and I went not that often to the cinema. But I can still remember there were some movies to which some of the people from the university or from the dormitory there, they asked me to go with them.
But no girl.
Well, some of them are, but that wasn't the issue. The issue was, I think the movies, the theme of the movie or the subject of this was talking about some dictatorship in Iran, Turkey, and some South American countries.
So German movie talk about
No, that wasn't German movies. That was foreign movies in foreign language, I think, but with German subtitles.
Subtitles.
With German subtitles, yeah. And that was problems movies. We talk about the problem in the movies. We talk about the subject of the topic in the movies, about dictatorship, about how people are tortured in those countries, and so on and so on. That's the movies I can still recall I used to see. Otherwise, I didn't see quite a lot of movies in Germany.
So what kind of cultural shock you experienced when you in the West Germany, because at that time was still separated and Taiwan's under dictatorship and censorship? How do you feel about that?
Today we are living since 3 months, since March,
Yes,
in a society all over the world with social distance.
lockdown. So
Social distance was the key concept when I come to, as regard to cultural shock. You know, in Taiwan, people, we have very close, not only close relationship, we usually don't have that distance between people. The physical distance, if you go to a post office, you stand in a line, maybe 20 centimeters in front of you and behind you, you can even feel the breath of the guy standing behind you, and that was normal. So I come with this social behaviors model to Germany.
yeah,
And it happens quite often. If I standing in a line, and the people behind me turn around and say, "Would you please," friendly but very severe, and say, "Would you please stand a little bit with a little bit distance to me?" And I always got a shock. I said, "I didn't touch her. I didn't touch him. Why?" Or for example, I have a lot of friends in the dormitory. We play soccer together. We eat ice cream, Italian ice steel, and so on. So we were good friends. We cooked together. And once I want to ask someone to play soccer with me, so I called. That was my nakbar, my neighbor in my neighbor, and I said, "Thomas, komm, spielen wir Fußball. Gehen wir Fußball spielen." And there was no answer, no response. And I asked again, no answer. I knocked at the door.
yeah.
No answer. So
You turn.
I turned at and I opened the door. I pushed the door a bit, and the door was open. He was sleeping. He was sleeping. And after I said, "Oh, sorry, ich wusste nicht, dass du jetzt schläfst." And after that, he told me, if I called his name and he didn't answer, then it doesn't matter if he's inside or not. That means nobody's in there.
Okay. So don't open the door.
Yes, and you knock the door and you want to door, and that's not usual in Germany, for example. So for Taiwanese, for our Asian people, when we think we are good friends, then there is no distance. There is close relationship. Yeah.
So last question maybe we have. For people who are interested in Taiwanese history, Taiwanese cinema, how do you recommend this film or another documentary film we have to those audience?
Well, it depends on from which point of view you want to learn the history of Taiwan.
Yes.
I would anyway suggest maybe you could read. Today is very convenient to get some information about the history of Taiwan. I would even recommend watching these movies, 上海社会档案 or the 女王峰 the Queen Bee and so on. Maybe take a look, manga, 2010, It's also a kind of black movie. This manga, the gangster
movie.
gangster movie, was quite different, but it's also interesting to compare with each other.
Yeah.
Yes, and a good friend of mine who also gave a comment in Hou Jilan's documentary film Li Xiaofeng. Li Xiaofeng is a very good is authority in Taiwan history, and he has written quite a lot of books. Some thin, some thick. Read some books of him, and you would have the background, and you will know what does it mean when people are talking about literature, art, or movies during this time.
Great. So we have right now. Okay, good. So thank you so much for coming today.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
We have some gift for you. This. Just remind our audience that right now our tickets all online. The pre-order of the festival pass will be online since last week. And that's the 2 whiskey from Taiwan, the best whiskey, Cavalan whiskey. From our sponsor, King Cards. And the first 150 buyers will receive this tote bag for free, but only in Germany.
Interesting is, if I can add some words.
Yeah, sure.
Cavalan
is
original language.
Yes, indeed.
And during the 80s, even the 90s, it's anyway before the martial law was lifted, it was impossible to have a name of some original tribe as an official name of something which is important.
Yes.
So the Taiwanese consciousness is growing and growing after the lifting of the martial law. And if people start to ask, didn't we have this Taiwanese consciousness in the movies before the lifting of the martial law? There are some, but it was shown in another way.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting. If you take a look at this Wang Feng or the female revenge, there was quite a lot of Japanese element. But actually, Japanese element was banned
at that time.
But you can see some of the things there. And I've been asking me why. When I was preparing for this interview, for this conversation, I say, because it was bad sign. So it was allowed. It was underworld. It was black, the gangster. So that was okay. Yeah.
Also the film that's on the society of Shanghai, also with the Shanghai background, but actually it's a Taiwanese film. That's so weird.
The Shanghai social files, in the Shanghai social files is quite interesting because I think the director ate a name, the other name for the Shanghai社会档案.
The true version or something.
The girl's right of her first night.
True.
女人的我少女的初夜权. The girl's right of her first night. And the background, it comes from the novel from China. It's called 山河文学. We call it in German Narbenliteratur, or in English it was scar literature. And that was interesting because you couldn't recognize where that really happens. The real event happened in Shanghai, in China.
Yes.
But you couldn't recognize that very, very clearly. And it's interesting because 1979, there was Melida event,
Yes.
incident. In 1980, that was the judgment of Melida, Melida 大审. And almost parallel, you see in the newspaper how the Melida people, how they were judged in public.
Yes.
And in the cinema, you see something similar.
Yes, also.
In Shanghai 社会档案,
Yes.
yes, you see there was a fight between the police and the military. And at the end of the history, at the end of the event and at the end of the movie, the military won the game, won the fight, and the police who want to find out the truth, and I think he found out the truth, but he was the one who took care of this case, and he became the victim.
Victim of the entire incident.
Yes, and because the military, and what is military? Military is martial law.
Yeah.
Military means
Military
martial
is
law. So you see, let's say you see on the daytime, you see what happened in the society, Melida 大审, the judgment of the Melida. And in the evening, you go to a movie, you saw this, you watch this Shanghai society fires or in fires.
Yes.
I'm not sure the one who produced this film.
Yeah.
I can imagine. There must have been something very, very political.
Yeah.
In his head. But of course he wouldn't admit at that time. But what a coincidence. I don't think that was a coincidence. So if you take that as an example, and then you take a look at the other movies, female revenge. What female means, the weaker one, the weaker party, and the stronger party. And revenge, yeah, and revenge, that means justice. Lacking of justice. So the individual people are forced to make self justice. And that was as the plot that had nothing to do with politics. That has only with the gangster, the underworld. But you can apply the model to what happened in politics.
Yes.
And I think maybe the people, the writer, the screenplayer, and the director, they wasn't so aware of what they were doing. But I think that wasn't a pure coincidence.
Let's say that. But you can watch the documentary films, the Black movie, and also another film we have, the On the Society File of Shanghai. Then you can understand the Black movie history and also the classical movie of the Black.
Watching Black movie and thinking on white terror.
Yes.
That's what Lu Xiaofen did. White shirt and black pants.
Yes, black and white. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Action.